All right. I'm going to show you here. Here, let me take this off for a sec. So I titled this show, and I'm probably going to clip this as well. And it's called The Cheat Code to Wealth in 2024. And believe it or not, it is a cheat code. And everything in Bitcoin, it seems like, is based on proof of work. That's the Bitcoiner's mentality. That's what the Bitcoin network runs on. It requires real life energy to create new Bitcoin. So you have two options with Bitcoin. You can either buy some with the energy that you've already created in life. So if you've earned fiat or earned money and you want to exchange that for Bitcoin, you've already put in the work to earn that fiat to buy Bitcoin. Or second option is mining Bitcoin. So you can take energy, whatever electricity source you have, you plug in a miner and you have either a chance to win a block, or you can contribute your energy to somebody else and get paid from that. So those are the only two ways that you can obtain Bitcoin. There was no ICO where like Satoshi and all his friends got paid Bitcoin. It's never been done. It never will be done. The whole thing is based on proof of work. And that's a really good lesson, I think, for a lot of people. Regardless of where you're trying to get to in life, it requires work. And so this is kind of how this whole thing started for me. It was like, okay, I look at people in this chat who I've talked to, who I've had meetings with. Some people are 60 years old. Some people are 20 years old. And the 60-year-olds, I sometimes get a little bit, not mad, but, disheartened a little bit, because I'm like, they just found Bitcoin like 6 months ago or a month ago, and they already have one Bitcoin. They just went for it. They bought one Bitcoin. And I'm like, okay, well, that's, I've been here for 4 or 5 years now. I've been working my ass off, and I'm not even there yet. But then I was like, you know what? The people who are that age, who are 60 years old, the baby boomers of the world, they've put in the work. The difference between a 60-year-old and a 22-year-old is what? 38 years? They've worked, they've put in 38 years proof of work to earn that fiat that they exchanged for one Bitcoin. So you really have to keep that in mind, especially if you're a younger guy or a girl out there. The people who are able to do that, they've earned that. They've put in the work. 38 more years than you. So just focus on what you can do, for one. But then I got to thinking, like, okay, that's the proof of work side of things, but there also is a cheat code within Bitcoin. I was thinking, like, and this spreadsheet is based on my life, pretty much. It's very general. It's not specific. It's just kind of using logic, right? So I compared my dad's path in life versus my path in life, and how this is the cheat code is that you could work for 40 years, but if you're working for a broken money and a money that's being devalued and inflated, you're actually going further behind than somebody who's only been working for 10 years, who's investing their money in a real money, hard money, the hardest money that's ever existed. So here's the breakdown. So again, the first part we're going to look at here is from my dad's perspective. This is all just approximate. It's not like I took this the day he first started working until the day he retired, but this is what I came up with here. And I hope okay, I'm going to put this up a little bit. Okay, so I'll just show you kind of where the numbers come from here. So this is 1980. I'm going to assume that that's when my dad started working. I think it was before that, but we'll just go with 1980 for simplicity. Let's say he was earning a salary of $40,000, which might have been a little bit high for the time, probably based on 1980. Salary, this is his expenses for the year. Life, paying for me to live, paying for my food. And I took 15 or 85% expenses. So he had 15% left over after his paychecks. 15%. That's what I used. I think back then that, a little bit more reasonable than today. And then I used an 8% return in the stock market, which is where most baby boomers save their wealth. So after the first year, he netted $6,000, and putting it into his pension or stock market, he got $6,480. And I did the same. I didn't keep his salary static. I used 2% inflation every year. So in 1980, he started at 40,000. And in 2023, he ended at 93,000. So again, this is not actual numbers. This is just kind of your average baby boomer, I think. Get into the workforce, making about $40,000. You get a 2% inflation every year. Some years it's 0, some years it's 5, some years you get a bonus, but I averaged it at 2% inflation every year. And I kept the expenses the same, even though they probably increased through the years. And then I used an average return throughout the whole time of 8%. So let me put this, what's this, disposable, and then return. Okay. So at the end of it, this is 1980, 30 years in 2010, 40 years in 2020, 43 years in the workforce. At the end of it, he was making $93,000 per year. He had 14,000 left over. Again, I kept the 15% the whole time. And if he kept all of it, he never spent any. 43 years, he earned $1.9 million. That's what he had in his account. 1.9 million. And so this is me. All right. A little bit different. I started a little bit before this, but I thought 15 was a pretty good angle. It's not too early, but it's not too late. So keep in mind here that all of this was saved in fiat. This was saved in the stock market. And if we looked at the purchasing power of that, it probably would be much worse than that. I mean, 1.9 is pretty good, but the real amount after inflation would be much less than that. So this is my journey here. 2015, let's say I was making, I kind of went with the same for this as he had. I started with 79,000. Pretty high probably, but I used 10% savings. And I think that that's pretty standard for a lot of people, for the average person, 10% savings. And so after the first year, I had $8,000 left over, which would have bought me, instead of saving in the stock market, instead of saving in fiat, I went the Bitcoin route, and I would have got 328 Bitcoin for that in 2015. Imagine if I went back to like 2012, but I figured this was more reasonable. Sorry, that's wrong. This was the price of Bitcoin. Here, let me fix this. Sorry. So we got salary, we got expenses, we got my disposable. This is the price of Bitcoin, and this is my return. This is the Bitcoin I have. So I use the exact same inflation, 2%. I used, for the expenses though, I figured it was a little bit more expensive to live, so people would have less disposable income. So I actually used 10% instead of the 15 I had for my dad. So I used 10%. I would have had 8,000 disposable. I would have got 24 Bitcoin. And you can look here, I went from 79,000 to 93, just like my dad. And again, these wouldn't be exact. These might be a little bit different, but I think that this would be the average for a lot of people. You work 10 years in a job, you're probably going to be, earning about 2% inflation, which is wild, but that's how it is. So at the end of it, after how many years is this? 9 years. I would have had 41 Bitcoin. The price of that Bitcoin today is 67,000. And I would have myself $2.751 million worth of Bitcoin. So my dad worked 43 years, earning 8% a year. He would come out with 1.9 million, saving in fiat in the stock market. I worked 9 years, but instead of investing in the stock market, instead of saving in fiat, I actually chose to buy Bitcoin. And I came away with $2.7 million worth of Bitcoin after 9 years. So that's the cheat code. even though you do have to put in the work. But keep in mind here, even those 9 years, here's the difference. And it really depends on what you define as work. Because in 2015, I would have had the insight. I would have had to put in the time, put in the work. I would have had to have the conviction to hold on, to not only buy the Bitcoin back in 2015, to take a chance on that, but I would have also had to put in enough work and time to have conviction over Bitcoin that I held it through going from 328 to 61,000 in 7 years, and then dropping down to 20,000 the next year. So I would have had to have the conviction to hold on to that Bitcoin through all that noise. So that is the cheat code itself. The cheat code is that if you're saving your energy, every time you earn anything, fiat, Bitcoin, whatever it is, you're taking your time and your energy, you're adding value to the world, you're getting paid in a currency for that. That's what your reward is. You get paid for that. And so if you're saving in fiat, if you're saving in the stock market, the cheat code is, instead of using that, just put it into Bitcoin and hold on for 4 years, hold on for 8 years. And if you're somebody out there who's young and you're trying to get ahead in the world, this is your only option. The cheat code is, instead of working for 43 years and having less than somebody who worked 9 years and invested in Bitcoin, put their disposable income in Bitcoin, 43 years versus 9 years, that's the cheat code. Just by saving in a different currency. You didn't have to trade it. You didn't have to leverage it. You just had to take whatever you earned through that time and put it into Bitcoin, the hardest money that's ever existed, versus fiat, the softest money that's ever existed. So that's the cheat code. And I would encourage you. I know people watching the show, you kind of understand this already. So I would encourage you to send it to anybody in your life who's like 18 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old. I feel like people in that generation right now feel like there's no hope for the future. But if you tell them not only about Bitcoin, but the fact that it's a cheat code to life, you can skip this whole thing. You can skip whatever's about to happen in the financial markets, in the banking crisis, in the government collapse, all this stuff. You can skip that. You just put your time and energy, whatever you have left over, you put into Bitcoin. That is the cheat code. Fuck, I love spreadsheets. Oh, there we go. Okay. My Path to Fire says it shows the extent of fiat stealing by central banks. Well, you know what? We didn't even factor in like the real earnings there. Like, we didn't factor inflation into that. That's just saving money in fiat at an 8% return. Because if you would have factored inflation into that, it would have been way more dispersed. I see Grinder over there as well. The Grinder watching on Amethyst while having lunch at the Italian. Cheers, Grinder. Zapped 121 sats. Good to see everybody. Here's the thing for me, is like, do you call him Grinder or do you call him the Grinder? Because I was going to say good to see Grinder, but it might be the Grinder in here. I don't know. Maybe he can answer that. All right. Bodhi says, love the sheets. Love the sheets. Brett, good morning all. I often listen in the shower so I don't chat, but good way to start the day. Wow. I'm on in your shower. Don't worry, I do the same thing with podcasts as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts in the shower. It's where I get the majority of my thinking done, in the shower. So Brett, if you're still in the shower, make sure you get here's a question for you. This is for Brett and anybody else out there. Before we end the show today, here's a question for you. As a guy, when you're scrubbing in the shower, do you wash your legs, or do you just let the soap from the top of your body secondhand wash your legs? Something I never really think about, but I think people do it differently, because for myself, I typically don't wash my legs. I just let the runoff from the upper body catch some scum on the way. But once in a while, like if I, if it's hot out or if I do a workout, I'll wash my legs. But for the most part, like I don't ever wash my legs. It's kind of weird. Women have to shave their legs, so they go through the whole process quite frequently. But for guys, like I don't know, do you wash legs, Brett? Did you wash your legs in the shower today? As long as you wash your feet, that's another thing. I rarely wash it. All right. Well, you guys are better than me. Maybe I'm the weirdo. We're getting some good comments here. Wow. Okay. Well, Innovation Bull says I definitely scrub my legs and feet every day. I do not. I might do it once a week. Maybe. But I'm like somebody who loves to be clean, and I've never like felt dirty in my legs before. So I don't know. I mean, everybody probably is different. Some people do probably like, outdoor work or the gym. I try not to sweat too much in a day. I try to sweat a little bit, but unless I have to, I don't know. All right, well, I'm the weirdo, I guess. Good to know. Bodhi, 60-year, Bitcoin Buddha. Nothing makes a 50-year-old mechanic glaze over like a good spreadsheet. Sorry, Jor. I love you, brother. Yeah. So the reason I like spreadsheets, though, is I just kind of, it'd be easy for me to, oh, I got some wild hair this morning. It would be easy for me to just sit here and say, like, okay, I did the calculation. After 43 years, this is what somebody in fiat would have earned, 1.9 million. Somebody in Bitcoin would have earned 2.7 million after 9 years. It'd be very easy. It would take 10 seconds, but like there's no work there. You didn't see where the variables are. And you don't have to follow the spreadsheet through all the cells, but you have to know what the inputs are for what I'm talking about. That's the visual part of the spreadsheets. That's why I like it. And that's why I think people like it. You got to show your work. All right. Juan Lolito says the problem when you're young, you don't want to make it in 10 years with Bitcoin, and then you gamble and hope to make it in 1 year. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like it's not a cheat code that's going to win in a year. It's a cheat code that's going to win over 10 years. So there is still a lot of proof of work. You have to understand that you have to have conviction. But I would still say that a cheat code is 9 years versus 43. So it's just like a different kind of cheat code. But yes, I do agree with you. Most people that age feel like life is very unattainable. Success is very unattainable. And they try to make 10 years worth of income or 43 years worth of income in 1 year with fucking Scooby-Doo NFT or Scooby-Doo token, right?